thus causing the work of the body to be stymied or hamstrung unnecessarily to a point of financial paralysis and economic inaction. We at the PSC are not in charge of our funding or of our budgets, and we have to jump through several bureaucratic and administrative hoops to get something as simple sometimes as an extension cord. Without seeking to embarrass anyone, I can say quite candidly that I now walk with my own extension cord to all of our meetings. So can you imagine the challenges of us trying to host or fund a conference such as this? Mr. David West, we at the PSC are envious of you. We aspire someday to be able to have this type of robust independence. But the bigger picture is to get our legislators and lawmakers to understand and appreciate the need for and the importance of legislatively compelling our politicians to source and allocate the required funding to ensure that we are sufficiently, adequately, and independently funded to carry out our functions without being beholden to anyone or anything. However, in a Caribbean context, very often of maximum leadership and do as I say and not as I do, and with the obsessive need for total control by so many of our leaders, this may be the nub of the issue and the main source of the challenges faced by oversight and civilian oversight institutions in the Caribbean. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. George. He made a very valid point about budgetary restraint. Guyana experiences the same sort of problem. Very often when money is needed to go on outreach visits, because Guyana is a large country, and most of the interior locations, one has to travel by chartered aircraft, which costs money. There's no regular air service to those areas. And when a request is made, more often than not, the Minister of Finance will use a hatchet to cut whatever you may have been wanting to receive. The next panelist is Dr. Wendell Wallace. But before I go to that, at 1:20 this afternoon, West Indies was on the verge of victory against England. They had needed 9 runs of 3 overs, and Chris Gayle was then on 99. I sincerely hope that there was not a collapse as often happened in the past, and the bad news will come later on. So we hope they have succeeded against England, and they will continue to move forward in the competition. We won? I overheard that we won. But at least I've given good news. I also hope that Chris Gayle has scored a century, which would have been his second for the T20. So Dr. Wallace, up to you.
Yes, good afternoon again. I was about to start. I asked my panel, how should I start? Seeing that Chris Gayle scored 100, right? But I will not venture there. See that many persons didn't catch it, right? So we'll say, don't blush, baby. He scored 100, right? Don't blush. Right. This presentation looks at civilian oversight of police. And I practically chose police based on a close relationship that I've had with policing. So it says oversight of law enforcement, but law enforcement is much wider, and I try to narrow it into policing. But before we get there, we want to understand who are the police. And if you go back to Sir Robert Peel, 1829, Sir Robert Peel gives you good guidance as to who the police are. Basically, Sir Robert Peel says that these are full-time officers of the state who are paid to do what you are supposed to do. In other words, Sir Robert Peel says that these are persons who spend 24 hours per day looking after your interest, which at one point in time was incumbent upon you so to do. Therefore, police officers possess the state monopoly on the use of force. And certainly, they are supposed to use it to promote and to protect the rights of citizens. However, within the global context, we are all aware that police officers are prone to embark upon frolics of their own, and they may abuse power. And in so doing, they abuse citizens. The Roman poet Juvenal asked a very important question. Basically, he asked, who will guard the guards themselves? And that might have been translated by our own local Calypsonian King Austin when he sang, who will guard the guards? In other words, we have always been confronted with a situation of wanting to know who should hold police accountable. The answer to that question, I proffer, is external civilian oversight of police bodies. Now, external civilian oversight of policing is predicated on the need for accountability. It's predicated on the need for accountability. But some people may question the level of accountability that we have in the Caribbean regarding our own police departments. And I see that Dr. Gomes is in the audience, so I must pay respect to her for having used some of her work. So Dr. Gomes says in 2007 that police forces across the Caribbean region are characterized by high levels of corruption and severe weakness or complete lack of accountability mechanisms. Whether I agree or disagree with Dr. Gomes, that's for a different conversation, but I want to take you now to some of the police accountability systems that we have in the Caribbean. Indeed, we do have accountability systems. And this Table 1 from the U.S. State Department shows, for example, that ranging from Antigua to Trinidad and Tobago, including Jamaica, which has a novel situation, that we have oversight, we have accountability systems, because oversight is predicated on accountability. For some people, they may believe that civilian oversight of police, that it's new. It's not a new mechanism. It's not a new concept. It has been with us for quite a while. And indeed, it's an established feature within global institutional landscape of policing. In other words, almost every country that I've looked at, they have some form of civilian oversight mechanism. But the term civilian oversight in itself creates a definitional conundrum, in that there are many definitions. There's no one definition as to what is civilian oversight of police. So I'll just use one or two definitions. McKenna says it refers to the actual mechanisms of holding police accountable. Miller says it involves people from outside of the police organization taking a role in calling police officers to account for their actions. McKenna also says it's an entire system of ensuring that police services are delivered in a manner that is conducive to the public good and in accordance with standards of justice. There are many other definitions, and as a result of this definitional conundrum, I sought to operationalize what is civilian oversight of policing. And my operationalization says that it's any agency with specific procedures involving participation by persons who are not police officers in the review of civilian complaints against police officers, but also involving organizations that have a responsibility for police policies as well, for broader oversight of police policies. So I've put both perspectives together, because quite often when we think about civilian oversight of police, generally we think about misconduct and misbehavior by police. But the literature shows that there's another side to civilian oversight, and one that is often hidden in the literature. It's hardly ever looked at. But indeed, civilian oversight also looks at broader police policies. So what were the aims and objectives of my study? Aims and objectives of the study. Basically, I wanted to understand the various typologies of civilian oversight of police in the Caribbean. I wanted to identify whether we have advantages, disadvantages. I also wanted to understand, okay, what are some of the issues which are faced by newer jurisdictions seeking to implement oversight bodies. Also wanted to look at or to examine methods and possibilities of embracing civilian oversight. So again, this is another study, empirical study, which I've conducted. I used official documents from throughout the Caribbean. I also created and distributed some civilian oversight survey questionnaires. Emanating from that were data sets which I analyzed, and the proxies for the study had been leaders in Guyana, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago. There are also, like my previous study, you have theoretical explanations and theoretical support for the use of oversight. And the major theory here is the deterrence theory. Basically, when police officers feel that they are being watched, they are being looked at by some entity, they tend to conform to standards and norms. You also have the transactional influences on behavior. In other words, people are motivated either by punishment or rewards. And if you have an organization in place which epitomizes punishment, and I'm not saying that the role of oversight agencies, it's only to punish, but they are viewed in that light, and based on that, police officers tend to conform to proper standards of behavior. So I'll share with you some of the results. So in descending order of difficulty, these are some of the challenges. Seems as though something is right. In terms of the challenges to external oversight, these are the results that came from the study. Legislative misalignment, inadequate funding, and I heard Mr. George spoke about funding. I heard our moderator spoke about it as well. So that indeed resource allocation and funding is a problem. The data showed that you have a lack of adequate staff. Staffing seems to be an issue across all